The Chicago skyline glittered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Leonardo's temporary office, 17 floors above the bustling streets. 3 months into his assignment at the tech firm's headquarters, he'd grown accustomed to the late-night video calls with Vanessa, timing them perfectly between his evening meetings and her morning coffee back in Miami. "I miss you so much, baby." Vanessa's voice crackled through his laptop speakers, her face pixelated for a moment before the connection stabilized. She was sitting at their kitchen island, the morning sun casting golden streaks through her auburn hair. "Just 6 more weeks," Leonardo replied, forcing a smile despite the exhaustion weighing on his shoulders. "Then I'll be home for good, with that promotion we've been dreaming about." Something flickered across her face, a micro-expression he might have missed if he hadn't been married to her for 7 years. "That's wonderful, Leo." "Really?" After they hung up, Leonardo stared at the black screen, an uneasy feeling settling in his stomach. He'd installed that security system, and just before leaving, a top-of-the-line setup with cameras covering every entrance and the main living spaces. "Better safe than sorry," he told Vanessa, who had laughed at his overprotectiveness. Now, at 2:47 a.m. Chicago time, unable to sleep after another grueling day of presentations, Leonardo found himself logging into the security app on his phone. Just to check, just to ease that nagging feeling. The living room camera showed nothing unusual. Kitchen, empty. Driveway, clear. He was about to close the app when movement caught his eye on the bedroom feed. His finger froze over the screen. There was someone in his bed with Vanessa, and even in the infrared night vision, even from that angle, Leonardo recognized the distinctive tattoo on the man's shoulder, the same compass Rose's cousin Caio had gotten on their fishing trip to the Keys 2 summers ago. Leonardo's phone slipped from his hand, clattering onto the hardwood floor. His chest tightened, each breath becoming a conscious effort. But as the initial shock subsided, something else took its place. Not rage, not despair, something colder, more calculated. He picked up his phone, took a screenshot, and began methodically saving every piece of footage. Chapter 2. The Art of Pretense. "How was your day, honey?" Vanessa's voice was cheerful during their next call, as if nothing had changed, as if she hadn't spent the previous night with his cousin in their marital bed. "Productive," Leonardo replied smoothly, having practiced his normal tone in the mirror. "Closed the Morrison account. Jim was impressed." "That's amazing. I knew you would." Her enthusiasm sounded genuine, almost. Over the following weeks, Leonardo became a master of compartmentalization. By day, he excelled at work, channeling his emotional turmoil into laser-focused productivity. His colleagues commented on his dedication. His boss fast-tracked his promotion paperwork. By night, he documented everything. The security system proved more valuable than he'd ever imagined. Not just for the bedroom footage, which he could barely stomach reviewing, but for the pattern it revealed. Caio arriving shortly after Leonardo's scheduled calls. Vanessa deleting doorbell footage, not realizing the system backed up everything to the cloud. Their casual touches in the kitchen, the way they'd toast with his wine, from his collection, in his house. Leonardo consulted with a divorce attorney via secure video calls, ensuring attorney-client privilege. Marcus Wheeler, a sharp-minded lawyer with 30 years of experience, reviewed the evidence with clinical detachment. "Florida's a no-fault divorce state," Marcus explained, "but infidelity can impact alimony and asset division. This footage, combined with financial records showing misuse of marital assets, your cousin's been living quite well on your dime, hasn't he? Gives us significant leverage. I want it airtight," Leonardo said. "When I move, I want no room for negotiation." Marcus smiled grimly. "With what you've shown me, she won't get a penny she doesn't deserve." Leonardo began liquidating certain assets, moving money legally, but strategically. He documented every expense Vanessa had made with their joint accounts during his absence. Lavish dinners, jewelry, weekend getaways to South Beach that she'd claimed were girls' trips. 3 weeks before his return, he had everything: footage, financial records, legal documents prepared and ready. He even had Caio on camera bragging to Vanessa about a business deal he'd made using insider information Leonardo had shared with him in confidence. a detail his lawyer assured him could have serious legal implications. "You sure you want to do it this way?" Marcus asked during their final consultation. "Most people prefer a private confrontation." Leonardo's jaw tightened. "They made their choice in my home, with my family. They can face the consequences the same way." Chapter 3. The homecoming. Miami International Airport buzzed with the usual chaos of arrivals and departures. Leonardo emerged from the gate, carry-on in hand, to find Vanessa waiting with a bouquet of his favorite sunflowers. She practically glowed, her sundress flowing as she rushed to embrace him. "God, I missed you," she whispered against his neck, and Leonardo fought not to stiffen at her touch. "Missed you too," he managed, accepting her kiss with practiced normalcy. The drive home was filled with her chatter about neighborhood gossip, her sister's new baby, plans she'd made for his welcome home party that weekend. Leonardo nodded, smiled, responded appropriately while his mind ran through his own plans. "I thought we'd keep it small," Vanessa said as they pulled into their driveway. "Just family. Your mom's dying to hear about Chicago, and Caio said he'd bring that wine you like from the specialty shop." "Caio's coming?" Leonardo asked, allowing just a hint of surprise. "Of course. He's been so helpful while you were gone, checking on me, fixing that leak in the garage." She squeezed his hand. "You're lucky to have a cousin who cares so much." "Indeed I am." The house smelled like his favorite meal, ropa vieja simmering in the slow cooker, the aroma mixing with fresh-baked bread. Vanessa had set the table with their wedding china, candles already lit despite the afternoon sun streaming through the windows. "I have a surprise for you," she said, practically bouncing with excitement. "But you have to wait until the party on Saturday." "Funny," Leonardo replied, pulling her close with calculated tenderness. "I have a surprise too. For everyone." That night, as Vanessa slept beside him, in the same spot where Caio had been bus 48 hours earlier, Leonardo lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The camera's red light blinked in the corner, a silent witness to his homecoming. He wondered if she felt any guilt, any remorse. Her peaceful breathing suggested otherwise. Saturday arrived with typical Miami humidity, the kind that made everything feel heavy and oppressive. Family began arriving around 6. His parents, his sister Maria with her kids, various aunts and uncles, and finally, Caio, strutting in with an expensive bottle of wine and an easy smile. "Primo," Caio embraced him enthusiastically. "Man, you look great. The Windy City treated you well." "It was educational," Leonardo replied, returning the embrace with measured force. Dinner was a performance worthy of an Oscar. Leonardo regaled them with stories of Chicago, accepted congratulations on his promotion, and played the part of the loving husband returning to his devoted wife. Vanessa and Caio were careful. No lingering glances, no accidental touches. They'd clearly practiced their own performance. As dessert was served, his mother's famous flan, Leonardo stood, raising his glass. "I want to thank you all for coming," he began, his voice steady. "These 3 months away gave me a lot of time to think about what's really important. Family, trust, loyalty." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room, and I realized I wanted to share my journey with all of you. So I put together a little presentation. "Vanessa, would you dim the lights?" She smiled, moving to the switch. "Is this my surprise?" "In a way," Leonardo said, connecting his laptop to the TV. "It's definitely surprising." The screen flickered to life, but instead of Chicago skylines or business presentations, the first image was a timestamp, 3 weeks after Leonardo's departure. 11:47 p.m. The room watched in confused silence as the security footage began to play. Caio entering through the front door with a key, Vanessa greeting him in lingerie, their passionate embrace in the foyer. Gasps echoed through the room, Vanessa's face drained of color. "Leo, I can explain." "No need," Leonardo said calmly, clicking to the next video. The footage is quite self-explanatory. Chapter 4. Truth in high definition. The dining room erupted. Leonardo's mother shrieked in Portuguese. His father had to be physically restrained from lunging at Caio. Vanessa stood frozen, tears streaming down her face as the evidence of her infidelity played out in merciless detail on the 65-inch screen. "Turn it off," Caio shouted, starting toward the laptop. Sit down, Leonardo commanded, his voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. We're not done. The next clips were worse. Not just the affair, but their conversations afterward. Vanessa laughing about Leonardo being clueless. Caio joking about sleeping in his cousin's bed, drinking his whiskey, living his life. You recorded us. Vanessa's voice was barely a whisper. I recorded my home, Leonardo corrected. You just happened to be in it. His sister Maria was crying. His mother had switched from Portuguese to English and back again, unable to find adequate words in either language for her disgust. Caio's face had turned an alarming shade of red. This is illegal, Caio sputtered. You can't. Actually, I can. Leonardo pulled out a folder from beneath his chair. Florida is a two-party consent state for audio, but video in my own home, perfectly legal. My attorney made sure of that. He slid the divorce papers across the table to Vanessa. These are for you, already filed. You'll find the terms quite generous, considering. You keep your car, your personal belongings, and the money in your individual account. Nothing else. Leo, please. Vanessa sobbed. It was a mistake. I love you. And these, Leonardo continued, producing another document, are for you, cousin. He emphasized the last word like a curse. A cease and desist order. You're to have no contact with me or any of my immediate family. The Financial Crimes Division might also want to discuss that Harbor Point deal you bragged about. You know, the one where you used confidential information I shared. Caio's red face went white. You wouldn't. I already have. The room fell silent except for Vanessa's quiet sobs and his mother's muttered prayers. Leonardo looked around at his family, some faces showing shock, others disgust, but many nodding with grim approval. I'm sorry you all had to see this, he said finally, but I couldn't let this charade continue. They chose to betray me in my home, with my family. It seemed only fitting that the truth come out the same way. His father stood slowly, walked around the table, and placed a hand on Leonardo's shoulder. You did right, Mio. The truth is always better than a beautiful lie. Caio fled first, mumbling threats about lawyers that everyone knew were empty. Vanessa tried once more to approach Leonardo, but Maria stepped between them. You should go, Maria said quietly. Now, after the house emptied, Leonardo sat alone in his kitchen, the same kitchen where he'd watched his wife and cousin toast their deception with his wine. The silence was deafening, but also somehow cleansing. His phone buzzed. A text from Marcus Wheeler. Heard from her attorney already. She's not contesting. You'll be divorced within 90 days. Leonardo poured himself a glass of whiskey, a new bottle, untainted by betrayal, and walked out to his backyard. The Miami night was thick with humidity and the sound of distant traffic. Somewhere in the neighborhood, a dog barked. Life went on. The pain was there, sharp and real beneath his composed exterior. 7 years of marriage, reduced to timestamps and legal documents. But there was something else too, a strange sense of freedom. The truth, as brutal as it was, had set him free from the prison of deception he hadn't even known he was living in. His phone rang. Maria, you okay? She asked without preamble. I will be, he answered honestly. Mom wants you to come for dinner tomorrow. She's making your favorite. Leonardo smiled despite everything. Tell her I'll be there. As he ended the call, Leonardo realized that Vanessa and Caio had taken his trust, his peace of mind, even his sense of security in his own home. But they hadn't taken his family, his real family, the ones who stood by him when the ugly truth came to light. The security cameras were still running, their red lights blinking in the darkness. Tomorrow, he'd have them removed. He didn't need them anymore. The biggest threat to his home was gone, exposed by the very system meant to protect it. Leonardo raised his glass to the empty night, to the truth, he said quietly. However painful it might be, inside the house, the TV screen had gone dark, but the memory of what it had shown lingered like a ghost. Sometimes, Leonardo thought, the best revenge, in confrontation or violence or even anger. Sometimes, it's simply letting the truth speak for itself, in high definition. The Miami sun cast long shadows through the windows of Leonardo's new apartment in Brickell, a stark contrast to the suburban home he shared with Vanessa. The space was smaller, but that somehow felt more expansive, perhaps because every corner was truly his, untainted by betrayal. Leonardo stood at his kitchen counter, preparing his morning coffee with methodical precision. The routine had become a form of meditation, a way to center himself before facing each day. His phone buzzed with a text from Maria. "Brunch at Mom's Sunday. She's making picadillo. You better be there." He smiled, typing back a confirmation. These family gatherings had taken on new meaning since that explosive night 6 months ago. The initial awkwardness had given way to a deeper bond, forged through shared pain and unconditional support. The divorce had been finalized 3 months ago, exactly on schedule as Marcus Wheeler had predicted. Vanessa hadn't contested anything, perhaps understanding that Leonardo's mercy in not pursuing criminal charges against Caio was contingent on her cooperation. She'd moved back to Orlando, closer to her family, and Leonardo had heard through the grapevine that she was working at her brother's real estate firm. As for Caio, he disappeared from Miami entirely. The scandal had rippled through their extended family and professional circles. The Harbor Point deal Leonardo had mentioned had indeed attracted the attention of financial regulators, though Caio had managed to avoid serious charges by agreeing to pay substantial fines and accepting a ban from securities trading. Last Leonardo heard, his cousin was working construction in Texas, his dreams of easy money crushed along with his reputation. Leonardo's work life had flourished in inverse proportion to his personal upheaval. The Chicago promotion had positioned him as a rising star in the tech firm, and he'd thrown himself into the work with an intensity that concerned his colleagues at first. "You know it's okay to take a break, right?" Jennifer, his project manager, had said one evening when she found him still at the office at 10 p.m. "I know," he'd replied. "I just need this right now." But over time, the frantic pace had mellowed into focused productivity. He'd learned to leave the office at reasonable hours, to accept invitations to happy hours, to slowly rebuild a social life that didn't revolve around a marriage that no longer existed. The hardest part hadn't been the anger or the betrayal. Those were sharp pains that eventually dulled. The hardest part was learning to trust again, not just in romantic relationships, which he hadn't even attempted yet, but in the simple act of taking people at face value. Hypervigilance, his therapist, Dr. Rachel Hernandez, had called it during one of their sessions. Your brain is trying to protect you by looking for signs of deception everywhere. It's a normal response to betrayal trauma. How do I stop? Leonardo had asked. You don't stop being cautious, she'd replied. You learn to balance caution with openness. It's a practice, not a destination. The therapy had been Maria's insistence, and Leonardo was grateful for her pushiness. The weekly sessions had helped him process not just the infidelity, but the deeper questions it raised. Why had he installed those cameras in the first place? Had some part of him suspected? Or was it truly just coincidence, a twist of fate that revealed a truth he might have otherwise lived with unknowingly for years? 3 months after the divorce, Leonardo had run into an old friend from college at a Wynwood Art Gallery opening. Sophia was a marine biologist, recently returned to Miami after a research stint in Costa Rica. She was brilliant, funny, and refreshingly direct. I heard about what happened, she'd said over wine and overpriced cheese. Miami's a small city when it comes to gossip. Leonardo had responded, bracing for pity or awkward condolences. Instead, Sophia had clinked her glass against his. Their loss. You were always too good for her anyway. They'd exchanged numbers, met for coffee a few times, shared dinners where conversation flowed as easily as the wine. But Leonardo had been honest about his limitations. I'm not ready for anything serious, he told her one evening as they walked along the beach in Key Biscayne. I don't know when I will be. Good thing I'm not looking for serious, Sophia had replied. I just got back from 2 years in the jungle. I'm just looking for someone who can hold an intelligent conversation and doesn't think marine biology is just about dolphins. Their friendship, with its undefined boundaries and lack of pressure, had become one of the unexpected gifts of his new life. The real test had come from months after the divorce, at his cousin Isabella's wedding. Leonardo had known Caio might be there. Isabella was his sister, after all. What he hadn't expected was to find Vanessa there as Caio's +1. The family had been in uproar when they found out. Isabella had tearfully called Leonardo, apologizing profusely, explaining that Caio had threatened to skip her wedding entirely if she didn't allow him to bring Vanessa. "It's your day," Leonardo had told her, meaning it. "Don't let my drama ruin it." But after what they did, they'll have to live with who they are, he'd said. "I won't let them take any more from me, including your happiness on your wedding day." So he'd gone, bringing Sophia as his +1 after warning her about the potential drama. He'd walked in with his head high, greeted family members, who quickly positioned themselves as buffers between him and the other couple. His mother had practically stood guard, shooting daggers at anyone who even looked like they might facilitate an encounter. The moment had come during the cocktail hour. Leonardo had been getting drinks when he'd felt a presence beside him. Vanessa, in a dress he recognized, one he'd bought her for their 5th anniversary. "Leo," she started, her voice barely audible over the band. He turned to look at her, really look at her, for the first time since that night. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. The confidence she'd always carried like armor had been replaced by something fragile and uncertain. "Vanessa," he'd acknowledged, his voice neutral. "I know you don't want to hear this, but I need to say it. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I destroyed everything for something that meant nothing." Leonardo had studied her for a long moment. "Are you with him now?" She'd glanced across the room where Caio stood alone, nursing a drink and avoiding eye contact with most of the family. "It's single quotes s ... complicated." "No," Leonardo had said quietly. "It's simple. You chose each other over everything else. Now you get to live with that choice." He'd taken the drinks and walked away, feeling lighter with each step. Sophia had read the situation immediately, engaging him in animated conversation about her latest research project until the moment passed. Later, Maria had cornered him. "How are you so calm?" "I wanted to throw my drink in her face, because I've realized something," Leonardo had explained. "The opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. And I'm finally getting there." The wedding had proceeded without further incident, though the family's cold shoulder toward Caio and Vanessa was palpable. They'd left early, and Leonardo had stayed late, dancing with his nieces and laughing at his uncle's terrible jokes. Now, 6 months later, Leonardo could feel the truth of those words even more deeply. The rage had faded, the hurt had scarred over, and what remained was a kind of clarity he'd never possessed before. He'd changed in fundamental ways. The cameras were gone from his life, not just physically, but philosophically. He'd learned the difference between healthy boundaries and paranoid surveillance. Trust, Dr. Hernandez had helped him understand, wasn't about guaranteeing you'd never be hurt. It was about believing you could survive if you were. His phone rang, interrupting his musings. Marcus Wheeler's name appeared on the screen. "Leonardo, I hope I'm not calling too early." The lawyer's voice was uncharacteristically excited. "Not at all. What's going on? Remember that clause we put in about the misuse of marital assets?" "Well, my forensic accountant just finished a deep dive. It turns out Vanessa and Caio's little adventures were more extensive than we thought. We're talking about nearly $50,000 in charges over those 3 months. Leonardo felt a familiar tightness in his chest. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we have grounds to recover those funds. With interest and penalties, you could be looking at close to $70,000. It would require reopening certain aspects of the settlement. But..." "No," Leonardo interrupted. "No, Leonardo. This is significant money. I don't want it," Leonardo said firmly. "I've moved on, Marcus. I'm not interested in prolonging this connection to them for any amount of money." There was a pause. "You sure? This is a slam-dunk case." "I'm sure." "Send them a letter making them aware we know. But that I'm choosing not to pursue it. Let them live with that, knowing I could have destroyed them financially, but chose not to? My freedom from them is worth more than $70,000. Marcus chuckled. "You know, in 30 years of practice, I don't think I've seen anyone handle betrayal with more class." "All right, I'll draft the letter. Take care, Leonardo. After hanging up, Leonardo felt a sense of completion. Each decision to take the high road, to choose healing over revenge, had been a brick in the foundation of his new life. His Saturday routine continued. Gym, errands, meal prep for the week, simple things that had become rituals of self-care. At the grocery store, he ran into Mrs. Patterson, his former neighbor. Leonardo, how are you, dear? She hugged him warmly. We miss you in the neighborhood. I'm doing well. Mrs. Patterson, really well. She studied him with the shrewd eyes of someone who'd lived through her own share of heartbreak. You look it. There's peace in your face that wasn't there before. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find yourself, he offered. Wise words from someone so young. You take care now. That evening, Sophia texted asking if he wanted to join her and some friends for dinner at a new restaurant in the design district. He considered it, then typed back, sure, what time? As he dressed for dinner, Leonardo caught his reflection in the mirror. Mrs. Patterson was right. There was something different in his face. The strain that had lived there for years, perhaps even before he discovered the affair, was gone. He thought about the security cameras, how they'd revealed the truth but also represented something deeper, his instinct that something was wrong. Even when he couldn't name it, the betrayal had been devastating. But living in denial would have been worse. The cameras had given him the gift of truth, however painful. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. He almost deleted it, then noticed it started with "This is CAIO. Leonardo stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it unread. Some bridges, once burned, didn't need rebuilding. Some chapters, once closed, didn't need revisiting. He grabbed his keys and headed out into the Miami night. The city pulsed with its usual energy, music spilling from restaurants, people laughing on sidewalks, life happening in all its messy, beautiful complexity. Tomorrow, he'd go to his mother's house for family dinner. He'd hug his sister, play with his nieces, and listen to his father's stories. He'd continue building friendships, exploring possibilities with Sophia, and creating a life that was entirely his own. The betrayal had shattered his old life. But from those fragments, he built something stronger. Not a life protected by cameras and paranoia, but one built on self-respect, genuine connections, and the hard-won wisdom that the truth, however painful, was always better than a beautiful lie. As he drove through the neon-lit streets toward dinner and conversation and the simple pleasure of being present in his own life, Leonardo realized he discovered something valuable in the ruins of his marriage, himself. And that, more than any revenge or vindication, was the greatest victory of all. The valet took his keys as he arrived at the restaurant, and through the windows, he could see Sophia laughing with her friends. Animated and alive, he paused for a moment, taking a deep breath of the humid Miami air, tasting salt and possibility. Then he walked inside, ready for whatever came next.